The first step is really hyper-personalized experiences. You can use things like software we released this year called our Copilot for Shoppers, which is essentially a generative bot that sits on your storefront and can talk to your customer without pre-scripting all of the workflows like a traditional bot. But it's doing that by understanding all of their preferences, their past purchase behaviors, their actions on the site, and then dynamically, essentially grounding on all of your merchandise data to have a conversation with them about what they're looking for.
Welcome to the E-commerce Toolbox Expert Perspectives, a podcast by Noibu, where we explore the elite strategies and cutting-edge insights with our expert guests. Get ready to propel your e-commerce business to the next level.
Welcome to another episode of the E-commerce Toolbox Experts Perspective. Joining us today, we have one of the leading voices in retail commerce. We have Michael Affronti, who's joining us all the way from Brooklyn, New York. Actually, might be in the city right now. He's the GM and SVP of Salesforce Commerce Cloud. So welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Caitlin. Yes, and I'm currently in our New York City tower. It took me a hot hour to get here from Brooklyn with the heat wave, but I'm very excited to be here today, and thanks again for hosting.
Awesome. A really big pleasure to have you on today. So I'm always curious to start off with a bit of your career journey. Obviously, you're in a senior executive role at Salesforce and one of the top 3 platforms out there in commerce, which is obviously a huge industry. So maybe talk to us a bit about how you got in your role today.
Thank you for asking that. I'm just a self-professed product geek. I just love building technology. It's just been a passion of mine for over 20 years and background in software engineering. And I kind of fell into the product management space when I joined Microsoft right out of college and spent a decade there, just having, honestly, the time of my life, getting a chance to work under such incredible people, working on products like Microsoft Outlook and Exchange. And I was eventually part of the team that helped to create the first version of Microsoft Teams, which many folks now use today. So I spent the first chunk of my career thinking and working on collaboration technology, and it really got me hooked on helping companies grow their businesses. And the first step to that is really helping employees work well together and communicate. I left Microsoft, came back to New York, where I'm from, and joined a very early stage startup run by some friends focused on the intersection of big data and telecommunications. Specifically, we were building a digital assistant that lived on your phone and used essentially all of the customer data that you have, and specifically we integrated with Salesforce at the time to build a real-time profile of people that you were calling and that were calling you. So you could be a better informed salesperson, a better informed account representative. And that was actually my first foray into working with Salesforce as an integration partner. And then spent time at about 3 different startups after that, really just focusing on different ways that we could use telecommunications and commerce technology to help customers grow their businesses with different solutions. So along the way, I've been essentially building commerce technology into the products and the platforms that I've worked on to help grow the businesses that I've been a part of. So I knew that the next step of my journey was always going to be to get onto the platform side of e-commerce, just a big area of passion for mine. And I'd worked at that point with so many different retailers that I really wanted to do that. So very fortunate set of events led me to join Salesforce a couple of years ago. And now, as you said, I took over the Commerce Cloud portfolio about a year and a half ago, and really fortunate to work on this incredible technology. And as you said, just working with some of the most amazing brands around the world. So it's been a fun journey. I'm still going, and I just really can't wait to see what can happen next.
Yeah, likewise. And I think this really is a good segue into my next question, which is maybe talk to us a bit about your strategic vision for Salesforce Commerce Cloud. Obviously, there's a lot going in the market just from a macro standpoint. I mean, you've been in commerce since pre-COVID, but the pre-COVID era, the COVID spending, everyone's replatforming, a lot of infrastructure build out. And then we see kind of not necessarily a freeze, but maybe now people are investing in different areas. Maybe curious about how you kind of take in all that data and how that really is going to help shape the strategic vision for SFCC over the next couple of years. And where do you actually think SFCC fits in the market in terms of best of breed platforms? So I guess those questions 1A and 1B for you.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll work my way through them and keep me honest, make sure I hit all the answers there. So first, for the folks listening, the first time you've maybe heard about Commerce Cloud or maybe don't know as much about the portfolio, Salesforce Commerce Cloud, as you said, one of the top e-commerce platforms in the world. We have a full portfolio of B2C commerce technology used by some amazing brands like Adobe Trading, LVMH, etc. We have a B2B software platform, and I'd love to talk a bit about that today, which is deeply connected into the overall platform and has been really an incredible area of growth for us over the last 5 years. We have an order management solution, which is used by a large portion of our retailers And lastly, we have an integrated payments offering, which is probably the newest part of the portfolio. And then you have, of course, our App Exchange and a whole bunch of amazing partners that support us. My sort of singular vision with Commerce Cloud, if you will, if I distill it down, or if you ask maybe one of my team members, is to continue to support the growth of the world's biggest and best commerce companies. And I believe truly that every company is a commerce company. And what I mean by that is our heritage came from over the last 15 years when the Commerce Cloud team was formed through the acquisition of Demandware. Our heritage has been in high-end luxury retail. And over that time, we've gained the partnership of some incredible retailers around the world who are still with us today and growing in ways that we never even thought possible. And what's been really interesting is that we've grown very horizontally as well. So not only have we grown in the depth and the complexity of the retailers that we support, but we've also started to support companies in a whole number of industries like manufacturing, health and life sciences, discrete pharmaceuticals, for example, even automotive, to really help them start to transform not just their B2C commerce, but for a lot of them, they're going on a B2B commerce journey as well. But all of that is in service of eventually growing more revenue and more self-service commerce technology. So our goal is to be the number one platform for companies of any type in any industry looking to add commerce technology to help them grow their business. And I think that's probably not going to change for a while because there's just so many great companies out there looking to transform. So to your second point, though, about COVID and what we saw as a business, we definitely saw what everyone, I think, experienced worldwide, which was when lockdowns happened, basically e-commerce was the way you interacted with the brands that you knew and loved and even found out about a lot of new ones. So we saw a massive amount of spending in the first year of COVID with folks just spending on replatforming and building out scale and infrastructure and tooling and adding on every bell and whistle that we could possibly provide them. And I think generally what we've seen is, and I'm sure you've seen the graphs where the COVID spending in terms of consumer behavior didn't stay up, right? It kind of re-normalized as though COVID almost didn't happen, plus or minus a couple of basis points. So what we've been seeing and what we've been working with a lot of our customers and partners on is just how do they rebalance their technology investments to make sure that they are spending money in the right areas for commerce, especially in retail, as stores have reopened and a whole different set of vectors has changed since COVID. So part of the platform that I think has been really valuable there is just the flexibility in terms of deployment options and configurations, both online and in-store. And we could, of course, talk more about that today.
Yeah. And I guess maybe one thing I'd like to pull on too before the next question is like, where exactly do you feel like you folks fit in the market from like a company size standpoint? Is it really with like, hey, as soon as you need an OMS and a marketing and you hit a certain scale of employee headcount, that's when a Commerce Cloud makes sense? Is it if you're just starting out? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. Like where exactly and kind of, is it SMB, mid-market enterprise? Because I think one challenge, and every company's faced it. Obviously, you have a lot of product experience. You can't be a master to everybody. You can't have someone who's just starting and then also service, I don't know, Walmart. I mean, Walmart's probably a bad example because they have an internal team, but you know what I mean? Like you can't service everybody with the same product. So like, where do you folks feel like you really fit into that equation from like SMB, mid-market enterprise? Curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think so. I'll answer it like this because I think it's evolved a lot, right? So again, our heritage, high-end enterprise luxury retail, over 10 years ago. I would say again, we have expanded a lot. So our sweet spot is still mid-market and up, right? If you are a mid-market or upsized company, and again, that sizing is different than typical software, as you know, because we're looking at things like obviously GMV and complexity of your merchandising and all these different things. But generally, if you're a mid-market or up company and you are looking to scale your commerce technology in both B2C and B2B or B2B, and especially if you're hitting on the things that we're really good at, like if you need multi-store, if you need in and out of store, if you need international, if you need, scale and reliability to do things like high surge events throughout the year, Cyber Week, et cetera. We are absolutely the platform of choice for that part of the market. Again, we started in the very, very high-end enterprise, and over the last, 10 years or so, we've broadened those two directions I was describing earlier. One of them is slightly more downwards. We are just helping more companies in the mid-market bands than we ever were. And also sort of laterally where we're helping companies not just in high-end enterprise retail, but in a number of different verticals and sub-verticals who all have aspirations or desires or even existing technology to go direct to consumer from their business.
Makes sense. So if you're like a mid-market, so about 100 employees or bigger, obviously there's going to be exceptions if you have really high GMV, omni-channel, multi-store, multi-currency. Sometimes you have stores, you're trying to intertwine all of it, buy in online, pick up in store. Like when you start hitting that level of scale, that's where you folks really think you're just like the best platform out there. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the other vector I would add on to it, Caitlin, is Salesforce is a big company. We have so many other offerings that if you step back just slightly, Commerce Cloud is a part of what we call the customer 360. And I think from a solution perspective, one of the things that we really believe we add a lot of value in is if you are already a Salesforce customer and you are also using things like our marketing cloud and our service cloud, we deeply integrate the commerce technology into that in a way that's like not easy or desirable to do with third-party solutions so that we make it really great for you if you're using more of our portfolio, because our belief is that to deliver that incredible customer experience, the customer 360, if you will, you really need to make sure that everything from your pre-sales engagement, like your marketing top of funnel, and also your post-order and care, like through things like service, are really deeply integrated to your commerce platform.
Love it. Makes a ton of sense for me. And I think as we look, and obviously this is all public, but some of our largest shared customers, which are on your website and ours, is you think of Guess, you think of Carrefour, which is a top 10 retailer in the world. You think of some of the LVMH portfolios or Cartier. Why do you think some of these leading brands have chosen you guys?
It goes back to, and I love that we have shared customers too, as we were talking about this morning. It's just such a great overlap and looking forward to even working more together. Kayla, I think it starts with the same value that's at the top of our list for Commerce Cloud is the same thing that's at the top of the list for Salesforce as a company, which is trust. And I think it's an often overlooked word in e-commerce discussions right now, if I be honest with you, but I think we talk about it a lot with our customers and partners. And for us, trust means a few specific things. It means things like uptime, reliability, scale, security. I'm sure you're very well aware with what you guys do. Security alone, in terms of just bot attacks and other security risks from a commerce perspective, are just going up faster than I think most folks ever thought possible, especially with things like AI helping attackers. So we focus a significant portion of our resources on making sure that we provide the most trusted, the most scalable, the most secure commerce platform. And I think over the years, as some of those incredible brands that we both share as partners have grown, it's the thing I think that keeps them coming back to us at the very like sort of root level of their needs, which is we know we can scale safely with Commerce Cloud. And then we start layering all the other technologies on top of it and AI and everything else. But in my mind, the thing that we do the best is we're here for you from that perspective. And I think that's really been something that customers appreciate.
Love it. And into my next kind of point, which is going to be completely separate. And we're going to start talking about kind of the composable, the headless space. But I'm curious, leading into that, Michael, we're seeing some platforms become more opinionated over time, meaning the users have less access to certain parts of it. It's starting to be more of like a SaaS solution. And then we're seeing other platforms kind of going in a separate direction where they actually want to empower their customers within the certain guardrails of fostering a culture of innovation and iteration, where you can spin things up quicker, move them out, and build a best of breed solution that works for you. I guess my first question is, how does that intertwine with SFCC's vision? Do you feel like SFCC will provide more of a platform for people to iterate on moving forward, or become more and more kind of prescriptive and put your customers more in a box over time?
Great question. Again, maybe I'll step just slightly back and share again something we saw happen as we were talking about just a few minutes ago with COVID and sort of the trajectory of everything in the market. We saw during COVID, and I would say for the year after COVID, just an absolute acceleration of customers coming to us saying, we want to go fully headless because commerce is going double-digit growth for us. We're hiring engineers left and right, and we really want to make sure that we are doing everything ourselves. And I think that that was a really interesting muscle that like kind of got flexed by almost everyone broadly. But then again, what we've seen now in the last 2-3 years, especially, is a lot of customers sort of rebalancing, as we talked about. What do they want their technology investment to be from a commerce perspective? Do they want to be essentially an e-commerce platform themselves and have to build it completely headless and think about things like managing their uptime for their storefronts and all the infrastructure behind it? Some companies do, and we support them, and I can share a bit more about our offerings. But again, I think at a macro level, what we saw was this giant flare-up of customers going, all right, headless is the future. Everyone's telling us headless. Let's go headless. And we have a very amazing headless offering. But again, I think what we saw was that it wasn't going to keep going up because customers were realizing that the total cost of ownership of a completely headless deployment can be quite expensive if you're not necessarily prepared for it. And operationally and technologically, it's just a lot of investment. So one of the things that we did, in addition to having our very robust headless offering, which really believe is incredible and helping a lot of the customers, even some that you talked about, we started to create this composable offering. This sort of happened because a couple of customers came to us several years ago during sort of the COVID kind of shutdown period and started saying to us, like, actually, we don't want to go completely headless, but we want more design time flexibility. We want to be able to bring engineers on board to focus on things like coding in generalized languages like React and really give us more control as a customer over the design, the storefront experience. But we don't actually want to be an e-commerce hosting company, which is what you essentially have to be in certain cases. So we created this composable offering. And I would say, to kind of pat ourselves on the back just slightly, it really was one of those moments where I think we saw where the puck was going, and I think we ran really fast at it. And now we're growing very, very well in our composable offering, which for folks listening is kind of a hybrid. We manage the runtime, we manage the hosting of the actual storefront infrastructure, but we give you our PWA kit, which are Progressive Web App Kit. So you can build a really lush front-end storefront experience, but without having to worry about things like uptime and hosting and security and infrastructure and CDNs and all the other stuff, backed underneath by the Commerce Cloud engine, which has all that trust, scale, reliability, and all the robust merchandising features. So I would say we still sell and service lots of customers going headless, but a bulk of the new business that we're bringing on is customers coming to us and saying, we're kind of looking for that middle ground. And that's really where composable has shined. The last thing you mentioned was, what's the sort of state of the union in terms of whether or not it's hyper opinionated or it's a sort of a box of tools that you go and build yourself. And I think our belief is that there will always be a portion of the market that needs fully headless, fully box of tools, give us all the raw APIs, and we will go wire up all the orchestration and pretty much everything ourselves. We also believe, like I said, that a sort of biggest chunk of that is actually going to be customers who really need something more like our composable offering. And then we also have a very, very robust templatized offering, which is what a majority of our customers are actually running on. And they tend to add in things like composable over time. So a kind of a long-winded way to say, I think it's an and, because the market doesn't want just one. But I really think in the conversations we have a lot with customers are, what do you need to be as a customer to make your business successful? Because sometimes it's not always what you think you need to be. So Salesforce Commerce Cloud, our position is we want to make sure we offer all of those to our customers and make them all run on the same platform. So if you need to move between them, which you easily can, you're not replatforming every time.
Makes a ton of sense. And I think something we haven't touched on yet, which seems to be at the tip of everyone's tongue, is it's not very often that we have a platform shift. There was obviously a platform shift 20 plus years ago with the internet. There's mobile. Now we're seeing kind of a platform shift in AI, at least in my opinion. And I've heard some of your talks, so I'm assuming we're probably not too far off on this topic. So where do you think AI and retail intersects? What are some of the tactical things that you see being brought into the market? And what do you think some of the opportunities are if you're a retailer by leveraging something like AI?
I was just talking about this. We had a bunch of our retail customers here in the New York City office last week. We were doing one of our roadmap sessions, which is a really fun experience. We basically just show them our roadmap and get feedback and use Post-it notes. It's really fun. The reason I mentioned that is we were talking about AI. And in fact, the thing we talked about first was not AI, but it was, what do you need to actually use AI effectively as a retailer? And that's where we were really focusing on data. And I think that's one of the things that in Commerce Cloud we have as another one of our large thesis for the next few years is having a single source of truth about your customer is pretty much required now for a retailer to really deliver an incredible experience using AI. And the reasoning is, and again, we've talked about this with so many of our partners, if you don't have a single source of truth about your customers somewhere, and our belief is that you can use our data cloud for that, which is some of the awesome technology we've launched this year, Connections, with that single source of truth, with all of the behavioral and transaction data about a customer stored in a single place, you can start to use AI in different channels to give your customers, I think the first step is really hyper-personalized experiences. You can use things like software we released this year called our Copilot for Shoppers, which is essentially a generative bot that sits on your storefront and can talk to your customer without pre-scripting all of the workflows like a traditional bot. But it's doing that by understanding all of their preferences, their past purchase behaviors, their actions on the site, and then dynamically, essentially grounding on all of your merchandise data to have a conversation with them about what they're looking for. And we believe that to have all that data together and then have AI sitting on top of it, you can deliver experiences like a customer coming to your website and saying, I'm going camping this weekend. What's all the gear that I need? And we can understand past purchase behavior, the things you were browsing just a few seconds ago, and even recommendations from cohort shoppers like yourself. All of that requires understanding the person deeply and then being able to layer the AI technology on top of it. So that's very much on the shopper, personalization, multi-channel. On the other side of the AI, we have a lot of it that we're building for the merchant. And I always give the classic example. We launched earlier this year the ability to automatically write product descriptions for your products. And for a lot of customers, especially in retail, that's something that they're already very good at. But you'd be surprised how many customers we work with for whom just translating into multiple languages is either expensive or time consuming or both. So we're starting to also apply AI in very discrete and very clear use cases for merchants to help them accelerate the way that they operate the platform and ultimately the way they deliver the value to their customers. So it's both sides. It's both for the shopper, which is predicated on having all of that great data about them. And then there's a lot of great tooling that we're building that we believe can help impact the productivity of the merchants running all these amazing commerce experiences.
Cool. I love those like super tactical use cases. I think it comes back to what we chatted about earlier, where you folks are best in breed is multi-language, multi-store. And it's really until we started selling into Europe that we didn't really realize that you can drive 6 hours in Europe and you're in 3 different countries with 3 different currencies. Like it's strange. You're in Switzerland, you look at something, it costs a little different than when you're in France. So there's a lot of like complexity and things like that. And to your point, like I feel like that's where you folks have really, really invested long-term and just one of the many areas. So it's really good. And Michael, as we look to wrap up today, do you have any kind of parting words of wisdom for folks that listen? We have a lot of listeners that are digital executives at retail or folks that are kind of in retail brands and work for in the e-com department. So curious, do you have any parting words of wisdom for them as we look to sign off today?
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for offering that. I talk to C-level executives at all of our customers all the time, and it's probably one of my favorite parts of my job. And I'll just reflect, a lot of the conversations recently have been about what do the next couple of years look like for them in terms of their goals with commerce technology. And I think it gets down to making sure, and my recommendation is have a really deep conversation with your solution integrator, if you use one, a lot of them do, and your technology partner, if it's Commerce Cloud, for example, and have that sit down this year about what does the next couple of years look like in terms of your business goals for commerce, and where is your data strategy and what stage is it at? And then where is your AI strategy? And I think those 2 exercises are something that I do either casually or formally. And we just did it last week here in New York more formally, literally like on a maturity spectrum. Where do you think you are with your data strategy for your unified customer experience? And where do you think you are with AI? And if you can get really like kind of clear and like really stare at your belly button for a second about where you are, then I think you can have a really amazing conversation about what the future of like multi-channel commerce looks like for you, because then you can start thinking about ways to enable that high level of personalization, that high level of transaction capability on every channel, on how to do that most effectively. Because I think the guidance I end up giving a lot is just things are changing so fast right now. I mean, the personalization scales that we can deliver now are even more than they were just 6 months ago, thanks to the way that we're building a lot of our real-time data pipelines. So have those conversations, get real about where you are with data and AI, but then also have a trusted partner with your technology vendor where you can go and say, let's figure out how to get to where we want to go even faster with those 2 things. Because I truly believe that over the next few years, things like generative conversational shopping are going to transform the way that people experience brands. And I want every one of our customers to be ready for it.
Awesome. This has been one of my favorite episodes so far. So Michael, really appreciate your time and we'll see you again soon.
Kalen, thank you so much. This was awesome. And to everyone, thank you very much for your time. And I can't wait to talk more. Thank you so much.
The e-commerce toolbox Expert Perspectives is brought to you by Noibu. To find out more about Noibu and how we can help you debug your e-commerce site and rocket your revenue, visit www.noibu.com. That's noibu.com. And then make sure to search for the e-commerce toolbox Expert Perspectives on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found, and click subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Noibu, thanks for listening.